Hello, and welcome to a new episode of The Career Changes. Our guest today is LaChelle Wieme, peak performance coach, business strategist, and author of Get Out of God's Way. During her journey to self-realization, she left her 20 years anesthesia career to become a coach for entrepreneurs. Today, we are going to talk about her career change journey, how science and quantum physics can help you to create sustainable improvement faster, and how to kick your own butt. Hi, LaChelle. Thank you so much for joining us.
That's so good to be here. Thank you for having me.
So let's start with your background. How did you start your professional life, or better, what was your first job?
Yes, so I have a background in anesthesia. So in the United States, where that happened is I got my 4-year nursing degree, and then I went back for my master's and then my doctorate in anesthesia. And I will tell you, because I think this is part of my story, is when I think back at my life, I had originally wanted to become a medical doctor in anesthesia. And I decided to go the nursing route into anesthesia because I told myself that I wanted to be with the patients more instead of supervising several different operating rooms. But the real reason, if I had to get really, really honest with myself, is that I didn't believe in myself or think that it was possible. And I feel like my career journey of becoming a nurse and then in my master's degree and then my doctorate degree and eventually becoming a professor for our Doctor of Nurse Anesthesia program really was an effort to prove my worth to myself. That if I added this another degree, if I added this fancy title, if I was able to work for the world famous Mayo Clinic, then I would be worthy, then I would be enough. And I think that all of those things really led me down a path of creating a life that I thought I should have, and a path of my life that it was going to eventually prove my worth to myself. And when I started my business, everything was flipped upside down, and here I am.
So the first part of your life, you were essentially moved by extrinsic motivation and approval from the outside world. That generally, I think it happens to many of us, and probably to the majority of people that become career changers.
Yeah.
But what was your dream job when you were a child?
It was to be a physician. It was to be a doctor. Um, I used to cut out pictures of the JCPenney catalog when I was little of women in suits. So that was what I was going to wear when I was a doctor someday. And it was just interesting because in my mind, that's what success meant. That meant that I would have a life that was different than the poor farm kid that I was. My parents didn't even own a house until I was 18 years old. So we didn't grow up with much. And so in my mind, that was an equation of what it meant to be successful and what it meant to be worthy of better.
Mm. And so how did you progress your career during those years before?
Of
Before you reached the point where you felt that was not really what you wanted to do?
I think that it was literally just me getting to the next rung of the ladder, going up, to the next title, to the next, fancy job. And I just realized that I never really had the fulfillment that I was seeking. And it was like, well, once I get here, then I'm going to feel that way. Once I get here, then I'm going to feel that way. And, I literally got to a point where I didn't have another rung of the ladder that I wanted to climb in my hospital life. And I feel like now that I look back on that, I just wasn't in my calling. I was in the field of medicine and doing all the things because it was what I felt I needed to do to become successful, to be able to get out of the pattern in the life that I grew up in. Instead of doing what was my calling to begin with, I was doing what I thought I should do.
So how and when did you start thinking about changing career?
Yeah, so it kind of happened by accident. And I feel like in my own personal experience, it was a divine intervention, I guess, because I believe that my higher power knows things that I don't know at the time. And I was introduced to my first online business. And when I think about it back then, I really was super busy. I had two kids that I was super involved with. My husband was busy coaching, and I had this great job. I was doing anesthesia half the time, and I was a professor half the time, speaking around the country at different anesthesia seminars. Like, I really had no business starting a business, but I was intrigued, and I felt like there was something about it that just made me feel like this could be a new challenge. This could be something that I wanted to prove to myself what I was capable of. So I thought, well, why not? And it was terrifying to me. I'm a self-proclaimed introvert. I had never sold anything in my life. And as you know, as a business owner, whether you realize it or not, like, you're selling yourself or you're selling your services and your products, all of that seemed terrifying to me. But I was willing to lean in. I was willing to be coached. And I remember thinking, if I'm going to do this, I want to know that I gave it my all before I decide if it wasn't for me. So I tuned in, I was really coachable. I sought expert help. And all of a sudden, I had this aha moment that I could have what I call the and life, meaning that I can feel challenged and fulfilled and feel like I'm making a difference in the world and be a more present mom and wife. Because the truth of the matter is that up until that point, I was the mom who was tearing into the daycare parking lot at the last moment before they closed to pick up my kids. I had given all of my energy towards my career to prove my worth. And then I felt guilty when I was there and not being a mom. And when I was a mom, I felt guilty for not working. And it was just this really messy place that I had never even realized until I started my online business. And I started to realize that there was a whole nother avenue that I could use my talents for to help people, but on my terms. And that's kind of what led that whole process and that path.
Mm. So today you're helping people to realize their full potential. They're helping with their business as well. What inspired you to become a peak performance coach?
Yeah, so I think that it was literally just a step of my path and then another step of my path and then another step. So what I found is that I had a lot of work myself to do. I remember, you know, an online business really does leverage the power of social media. And I remember thinking back when I started, I had 200 friends on Facebook. If I didn't know your mom, like, you didn't need to know my business. So I didn't even accept your friend request. And I didn't post anything other than the shared inspirational quote from somebody else. Like, I was very afraid of being seen and more likely afraid of being judged and rejected, right? And so I had to decide, if I was going to make this work, I had to overcome that fear. I had to put myself out there. I had to be afraid of being talked about, or I had to face that fear of being talked about or being judged or being rejected. And I faced it. I discovered that I wasn't going to die. I didn't spontaneously combust. And I was starting to grow, and I thought, this is amazing. And then I started helping other people do the same. And I started my first course, which was, I can teach people how to create a year's worth of social media content in a weekend, because I'm all about just like getting things done and being consistent. And what I found when I was teaching that course is that it wasn't necessarily that people didn't know what to post about. That was some of it, but it was that I'm afraid to put myself out there. I'm afraid to be judged. I'm afraid to, be looked at and talked about. And I'm afraid of failing in public and all of the things. And that really resonated with me because I had been there and I had figured out how to get over that. And I decided that I was going to help people to show up even when they were afraid. And that led me to doing some business coaching. And I started to notice a couple of different themes that were coming up over and over again. The people that were coming to me without traction in their business was because of really one of three things. They lacked clarity. They didn't know what they wanted or how to really help people or how to communicate that. So they weren't clear in their messaging. They were not confident. They didn't have the belief in themselves. They watched other people be successful, but they, in the back of their mind, wondered, do I have what it takes?
Mm.
And the last one was the lack of consistency, not showing up, not, doing what you said you were going to do. And I got to be honest with you that when I think about all of those things, it really does come down to this foundation of this belief in yourself. Because if you don't believe that it's possible for you, it's going to be very unlikely that you're going to even take the next step in the risk of starting something or taking it to the next level. You're not likely going to do the things that are going to require some discipline or some sacrifice because you don't necessarily believe that it's possible for you. And so it's really, really hard to have conversations that are scary or post things if you don't believe that it's possible for you. And so one of the things that I love to do is help people see what is possible and help them believe that it's possible for them and make some subtle tweaks so that they can follow through, so that they can have those scary conversations, so that they can trust themselves in their own decision making and watch people completely thrive in a life that is more aligned with where they're supposed to be.
So you just mentioned now 3 of the key points that generally hold people back in their journey to self-realization, and you went through these, and I think probably each of us can sort of identify with that.
Yeah.
So the first one is the lack of clarity, whether that's around what we want to do, our careers, our business. So how do you usually address these? What is a tip or something you can say to someone that feels like, I
Yeah.
don't know really what to do?
Yeah. So I think that, that lack of clarity can become part of our obstacles so easily. And there's so many different ways that can represent the issue, right? So it might just be, I don't know what I want in general. And what I want to encourage all of you guys to do is to dig down deep in what you desire. What would you love? And remember that those desires are placed in your heart on purpose for a purpose. So as long as those desires are going to help the betterment of the people around you, the betterment of the world, those are placed inside of you for a reason. And so rather than shoving it down or pretending that it's not there, or, oh, that desire to have that dream business or that beach house or the time freedom to take my kids on a 2-week vacation, all of those things are put there on purpose. And so don't shove them down. Don't ignore them. Don't pretend like it's not there. I want you to lean in and be curious about it and say, what would that look like? If time and money were no object, what would that look like? What would I do? What would my perfect day look like? And just lean into it, right? The other thing that I love to do is help people to get really connected to their intuition and their higher power. I believe that all of us have a connection to source. So all of us have this opportunity to tap into a supernatural intelligence that already knows the end of the story, that already knows all of the answers to our problems, that already knows the next steps. And so if you can tap into that inner guidance that you have, you don't have to ask so-and-so what their opinion is, or to read a billion different articles or another book or listen to another podcast that's going to maybe tell you what you should do. You already have it within you. It's just a matter of getting rid of that programming that's telling you that you need to have all of these other things in place before you can know, and to just get really clear on where you're being led yourself. So that's one of the things I love to teach people. And I think that once you can start to explore those things, you start to discover, like, what am I passionate about? What would I do if I had the whole house to myself for the weekend and I could do anything? What would you do? What would you do to help people with something that you've had to overcome? And how could you possibly use that experience to help other people along the way? So really just exploring those different parts of you is going to allow for all of those things to come in to focus. And then once you know that, then you can get massive forward momentum going once you identify what is the problem I solve, and then who has that problem. And then you speak so directly to that person, and all of your marketing messages is you create your services and your products that serve that one person. All of those things, then those puzzle pieces will start to come into play, and you'll start to see pretty fast, massive momentum in your business. So.
So another aspects that hold people back usually and lead to procrastination is lack of confidence. whether it is thinking about fear of failure, fear of judgment, money mindset, imposter syndrome. So
Yeah.
how would you help someone with this aspect?
Absolutely. So I think that, you'd mentioned earlier, like kicking our own butts, and this is really what I mean by that. To me, a butt is a belief underestimating truth. So all of us have these beliefs, this programming. I tell my clients that we are like a computer. Our body is like the hardware of the computer. It's the keyboard, it's the mouse, right? It's the monitor. But the software that's running the programming in the background is my subconscious. And much of the programming in our subconscious is built inside of our brains before we're even 7 years old. Because our subconscious can only accept and it cannot reject. That means that a belief that you take on when you're 6 years old, your little mind can't say, that doesn't seem right. So I'm going to give you, can I give you an example? When I was little, my mom would take us kids to the grocery store with her. So she had 3 kids that were 5 and under, and we would travel 30 minutes one way to the grocery store. We didn't have a lot of money. And if you can imagine, 3 kids in a shopping cart was probably really stressful for her, right? So she gets up to the counter to pay for her groceries. And I'm a little 5-year-old and I'm like, Mom, can I have that? Mom, can I have that? You're a mom, you can relate to that, right? My mom likely just overwhelmed. She wants to get the heck out of the store. She's already stressed that she has to, write this check because it's the 80s, right? And they don't have a lot of money. And so she looks at me and she's like, no, you don't deserve that, because maybe we were fighting, maybe we were, doing whatever. And so I don't see, hey, this woman is just really frustrated and wants to get the heck out of here. I hear, you don't deserve that. I hear, you don't deserve nice things. I hear, I have to be something or someone in order to be loved and accepted. And so I get these programs that are automatically accepted because my brain isn't developed enough to reject, and I go straight into my subconscious. So now my subconscious has this program running in the background that tells me I have to be a certain person to be accepted. People pleasing starts to come in, right? I don't believe that I deserve that. So I might fear success because I fear that I might be alone if I get successful and I'm at the top. I might not deserve to have nice things. So therefore I hold myself back from charging what I should be charging. You following me? And so we have beliefs that are running this program, and it's the context in which we look at the world all around us. Our brain, specifically our reticular activating system, is going to look for things in the outside world that justify a belief. So I will see things in my everyday experiences that align with that belief. And my brain is always trying to prove itself right. So I'll say, I post something and nobody responds to it. I'm like, see, you don't have what it takes. And it just keeps perpetuating that belief, right? So what I have to ask people is, if you say, I would love to do that, but I would be making more money by now, but I would start that business, but I would quit my job, but if you can notice your but, I want you to ask yourself, what is the belief that I have around that? I lived a very, very good career making a lot of money to, in the hopes that I would be able to make as good of a living doing what I'm doing, right? So my belief is I won't be able to make as much money doing my business as I am in medicine. The truth is that people in the entrepreneurial space every single day make more money than what I was making in my medicine career. So the truth is it's possible. So I get to choose to hang on to the belief, or I get to choose to hang on to the truth. And that's how I overcome my but. And a belief is really just a thought you keep thinking over and over again. So it's possible to get rid of those computer viruses, this faulty programming that we have inside of our brain, and to reprogram it into what we want it to say. And that just takes repetition and it takes emotion to say, I see people all over the internet every day that are doing this, so can I. And saying it over and over again can start to reprogram those belief systems that have been playing in the background unchecked for so many years.
Wow, this seems a lot of work, but very deep and interesting. And I'm sure our listeners are super interested to understand how they can improve themselves. So we cover clarity, we cover confidence, and then there is a third point that sometimes is an obstacle for people during their journey to self-realization. This is consistency. So consistency sometimes is what you mentioned before, is repetition of something different. So doing what needs to be done, and that can be due to disorganization, poor habits, lack of discipline. So what is a tip that you would give related to anyone that is struggling with consistency in their life?
Absolutely. So first of all, it doesn't have to be hard. Oftentimes we think that in order for us to be successful, there has to be struggle, and it doesn't have to be. You can create habits that are going to allow for you to have successful actions without even thinking about it. That's possible. That's one of the things that I teach people, is how to create success habits so that you just do things automatically. I also want you to check your butts, because if you are afraid, for example, that here's an example that I get a lot. I'm already busy. So subconsciously, I'm afraid that if I take more clients, then I won't be able to handle them. So therefore, I self-sabotage by not posting consistently, or not sending that email on a weekly basis, or not having those sales conversations, because deep down, I'm afraid of getting more clients because I'm not thinking that I can handle it. So really just getting into that perspective of, do I have a but in my way? Am I not posting consistently because I'm afraid of being rejected? Or maybe sometimes you just need some different systems or automation in place. A lot of my clients, I help walk them through automated evergreen funnels, or ways that they can make money while they sleep, because then you don't have to worry about motivating yourself if you have some automatic structure, automatic systems in place. Organization is another key. So if I know exactly that every single Friday I do my finances and I reconcile my stuff for my taxes, then it becomes a habit. And so having systems in place that allow for you to do something, that you have a trigger that helps you to remember to do all of that, is going to help you to do the things that you know you need to do consistently.
So I would like to do a quick game based on the most common but that people have when they have to come up with saying, I cannot do this. And I would like to go one by one, and then you can give me an answer based on that, a quick answer for each one, because there are a few of them to cover.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
I start with my first bar, that would be, I don't know what to do. What would you say to me?
Yeah. So I would ask you, that's your belief, is I don't know what to do. The belief is I don't have the answers already, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So what is truth? And then there's ways that you can use neuro-linguistic programming, for example, to try this. So if I were to ask you, you said, I don't know what to do. I would ask you, if you had to guess what you would do, what would you say?
That sounds great.
Right?
Yeah.
Or I could say something like, if it was easy, what would you do?
Yeah.
If I asked you, if you were to give me advice, if I was in the same situation, what would you tell me to do? It's just a matter of changing the way that you ask the question, because we already know the answer within us, but there's some fear that's holding us back from actually doing the dang thing. You know what you need to do. Oftentimes it's just the lack of courage to actually do it.
Oh, that sounds great. I like it very much. And it makes perfect sense. So the second one, I'm gonna say, I don't know what it takes.
Mhm. Yeah. So, I mean, again, it's just a reprogramming of that. So I would ask you, if it was easy, what would you do? And oftentimes it's literally just one step that we take. People oftentimes think that you have to have all the knowledge to take the step, or you have to have confidence to take the step. But the thing is that clarity and confidence are both a result of action. So take the one next aligned step, and then you're going to become confident to take the next aligned step, and you're going to take the next one because you're confident, and then you're going to keep going. Clarity also comes from action. So when you try something and you're like, yep, didn't like that, I'm going to change this a little bit and I'm going to take another action. Or, that worked, I'm going to do that again. So clarity comes from action. Confidence comes from action. So I often ask people, if it was easy, what would one small step that you can take do? And then it allows that to unblock that lack of courage that was holding them back. And then all of a sudden things start to click.
Mm. So the third one is I don't have what it takes.
Yeah. And so this is one of the things where it's just a matter of acknowledging that your brain has some programming inside that tells you that you don't have what it takes, right? Maybe you didn't do well in school, or maybe you thought you were going to be more successful by now and you haven't. And so your brain then holds that belief. It's in your subconscious programming. And again, your brain, your reticular activating system, is going to look for evidence to prove that it's right. So you're going to post something and nobody comments, and you're like, see? You're going to talk to somebody about your business and they ghost you, or maybe they just say no thanks, and you're like, see, I don't have what it takes. You get another month where you didn't meet your monthly income goals. See, I don't have what it takes. And your brain is going to continue to justify that. And so it's really just a matter of you acknowledging, I do have what it takes. Let's start to change my brain's way of looking at it. So how about I challenge myself to find evidence that I do have what it takes? Maybe it's collecting some testimonies of some people that you've worked with and reading them, and it just reminds you. Oftentimes I have my clients take different assessments, like strengths finders, so that they can acknowledge the unique gifting that they have been born with at a combination that no one else has. So it's literally just a matter of deciding what we want to focus on, and then teaching our brain to start focusing on that new belief versus a different belief.
And so another one, before we pass to our next question, maybe quite common. I mean, there are many of them, but let's say I don't have enough money.
Yes. So one of the things that I have identified is a theme with successful people. One of the things that I have to acknowledge first is they have the desire for better, and they don't shove it down. They don't ignore it. They acknowledge it. The second thing that they do is they decide. What that means is that you make the decision to figure it out. You make the decision to learn the things, to meet the people, to make it happen. And then the last one is you do. So desire, decide, do. You do the things that you said you were going to do. I promise you that if you believe in yourself that it's possible, you're going to freaking figure it out. I have clients who have gotten a second job. They have sold things. They have, taken a loan from an uncle to work with me, because when it comes to, I want to make a difference, I want to make my life better, I have this desire and I'm committed to figuring it out, I don't have enough money is just an excuse. It's a but. So I'm going to ask you the belief. What is the underlying belief in that? The belief is, oh, I don't know if this is going to work for me. I don't know if I have what it takes. What is truth? The truth is that there are people out there that can teach me. The truth is that people need what I have. The truth is whatever. And then you get to decide what you're going to focus on. And when you focus on truth, it's going to help you to decide, to figure it out, to be like, I know what, I don't, come hell or high water, this is going to happen. And then you figure it out.
Well, so we don't have much time left, but we have a big question coming up now, and that is, how can science and quantum physics help us to create sustainable improvement faster? This is a topic that you cover, and I never really heard anyone talking about this.
So I have discovered that this beautiful combination of quantum physics and brain science is what's going to help sustainable change. And so it all comes back to tapping into universal laws and to use the brain science of what oftentimes will hinder us to our advantage. Okay, so I'm going to give you one example that can combine both of them. The power of visualization. So there is a law, universal law called the law of assumption, that says that when I believe that I am this person, then the things that are consistent with that person will come to be. They will be manifested. They will come to fruition. Okay. So let's just say that I am going to use the law of assumption to say I am a multi-million-dollar business owner. Okay. So I am going to then tap into that law, and I'm going to start to visualize what that multi-million-dollar business owner does. What would I experience? How would I carry myself? How would I dress? And I literally visualize it in my mind of what that looks like, what that feels like. Okay. The brain science behind that is that my brain has these really cool cells called mirror neurons that cannot tell the difference between what is real or what is imagined. Just like if I imagine that somebody's chasing me down a dark alley, my brain can create my heart rate to beat and then I can sweat, right? Because my brain doesn't know that that's not real and my body reacts. So you use those mirror neurons to your advantage and you start to paint the picture of what she's like and how she acts and how she talks to people. And would a multimillionaire get worried about what this person thinks? No. Would this multimillionaire be afraid to pick up the phone? No. And so you're utilizing quantum physics, the law of attraction, to know what you want. And then because of that assumption, you're going to start taking aligned action. And when you can know what you want, you expect it to happen, and you take the aligned action, universe will literally bring you into fruition what it is that you want. And so this is just a tip of the iceberg with this, but I utilize this at my retreats and in my program because I want people to have long time sustainable change, but also faster, because with quantum physics, this is the best way for me to describe this. And we're short on time, but there's a movie, Finding Nemo. Do you remember that movie? Have you ever seen it?
Yes.
Okay. There's a scene in the movie where Dory and Marlin are looking for Nemo, and Dory's like, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. And I think that as entrepreneurs, we think that that's what we have to do, is just be in a good mood and just keep working. But when they meet Crush the Turtle, he says, hey, dudes, all you need to do is get into the EAC. And he literally helps them to get into the current that shoots them straight into Sydney. That's what quantum physics can do. It's no more of your hustle. It's no more of the just keep swimming. You can literally get from point A to point B faster because you've allowed yourself to align with the current of universal law. And so that's what I love helping people do, is that it doesn't have to be hard. It can be easy. It can be fast, but we just have to know how to use it to our advantage.
Well, that's great. It's so fascinating, but we're reaching the end of this episode. And so based on all your experience and everything, we ask you a question that we ask to all of our guests. If you could give yourself a piece of advice, what would you say to your younger self?
Yeah, I would just say to know your worth. Know your worth, know that you are already equipped, know that you are already worthy of everything that you want. And that will help you to have less fear running the show and more courage showing up. And I would have probably made changes a lot faster in my life if I had just known my worth from the start.
Well, thank you, LaChelle, for joining us today and sharing your inspirational career change story and wisdom with our listeners.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things that I was just going to offer, if that's okay, is that I actually created a quiz that it's called Do I Have What It Takes? And so if you are wondering, like, do I really have what it takes to be successful? I would love to invite you to take the little quiz, and it's going to give you a really good snapshot of what your chances are and some really great guidance on what you can do if you're falling short.
That's great. And maybe you can share the link so I can post it as well.
Absolutely.
So a last message for our listeners: don't forget to subscribe to our channel. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review and tune in next week for a new inspirational episode of The Career Changers. Thank you.